proceed.
Make sure my phone's off.
Yeah, so I was checking through your biography and I've seen how you have helped parents regain control over their homes from helping them how to like upbring their children and so on and so forth. So my very interesting questions, I after reading your biography, I had a lot of interesting questions for you because you have been there and you have seen the way the world has been evolving, how it has been changing and how everything has been transforming from the time when we were into the age of technology and up to this stage where we are now at an advanced age where everyone is on their smartphones. Yeah, so it's something that really triggered me to follow it up and be able to reach out so that we may have this conversation and discuss these important issues because I feel these are issues that are affecting a lot of young people, and a lot of parents are going through a lot of things because people and the youth are learning about things on the internet. Yeah, so I'll first start by introducing myself. My name is Inkumbus Kauna. Yeah, and I'm the host for Breakout Podcast, and I'm so delighted to have you here with me to discuss the issues that we're going to talk about today. I'll be really glad to also hear your introduction for the audience that may not be aware of your work.
Thank you so much for having me here. And yes, I love your introduction. And yes, I've seen so much through the years of we didn't have cell phones when my kids were born, and so I've seen the whole transition. And yes, just a little bit about me. My name's Debbie Godfrey. I have 3 grown children, and I have 5 grandchildren now. And I started
Wow.
teaching. Yeah, I started teaching parenting when my kids were 1, 2, and 6. And
Mhm.
I had taken a parenting class, and it just changed my life. And so I decided to teach, and I love this work. And I've been doing it now nearly 30 years, and it's made such a difference in my life, the lives of my children, and the lives of the thousands of parents that I've taught. And
Sure.
from the pandemic, I was doing parenting Zoom parenting classes every day, and I had parents from all over the world, from 26 different countries, attending every day a
Wow.
live parenting class. Yeah, so I met lots of parents from. I mean, we had parents that were up at midnight in India, and I don't want. Are you in Africa? Is that where you are?
In Moscow, Russia.
Okay. And yeah, well, so I had lots of parents from just all different regions, and it was super
Mhm.
wonderful. And we all love our children, and we all want to do the best for them. And I find that's the common thread between
Very,
all of us.
yeah, very true. So you have had this diverse experience because you have been able to interact with a lot of people and parents from different walks of life. And I've noticed that you have mentioned quite a number of countries there. So, according to your own analysis or perception, do you think the concept of upbringing is now more defined by the tech world, as we may call it, or social media, or the internet itself, as compared to the way it was previously? Because previously, children were not so glued to their phones as they are currently glued to their smartphones now. A child might have a smartphone as early as 8, and it poses a connection problem between the child and the parents. So, what do you think is defining upbringing now?
I think you're right. It's definitely changed so many things. And the first thing I noticed was that um, j- kids were on their phones, and they would
Hmm.
get what I called it an addiction. I mean, it was like they
Yeah.
were addicted to their phones, and parents had trouble getting them off their media and didn't know how. And so we spent a lot of time setting limits. And one of the biggest complaints parents started making is screen time. Everybody wants to talk about screen time. How do I set limits on screen time? How do I
Hmm.
how do I manage screen time? How much screen time? And I think what you're saying, what you said about technology changing, it changes to the extent that the parents allow it to, for the most part. I mean, it's true that technology is everywhere and a parent can't completely shield their child from technology, but
Yeah,
the amount and type of limits that a parent sets in their home actually has more influence on the kids. So there are quite a few parents still that restrict much, if not most, of the technology. And then there's
yeah.
many parents that have unlimited technology, and it just depends on the parent and how they feel about it.
So let me give this scenario. I've seen in the past years previously we didn't really have the problems that have to do with mental health as we are currently having them now. We would hear children engaging in things such as suicide more often currently, especially in the youth, as they used to be, as compared to the way they used to be in the previous years. So, the whole concept of children being exposed to the internet, to social media, do you think parents should be adequately involved in the lives of children with reference to the usage of the internet or social media? Should they be able to monitor, or they should be just like, well, you are responsible, do this on your own, I'll only check once in a while? How much do you think the parent should be responsible to be able to tap into the awareness of this child with reference to social media and the internet?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, they must be completely in charge early on, so that this is your responsibility as a parent is to be in charge of your child's social media use. It's almost like you could compare it to anything that is only appropriate for an adult, really. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
almost as I said, I compare it a lot to drugs and alcohol. It's something that is not for young people left without limits. There's
Mhm,
too much on there. You're referencing the problems kids have had. We've always had problems with suicide, and that's a very nuanced challenge. And
mhm,
yes,
mhm,
technology and especially social media has skyrocketed that, and the possibilities for
mhm,
children being bullied and being victimized. And there's so much more access to young vulnerable people because of
mhm,
technology. So it's absolutely a parent's responsibility. And
mhm,
your responsibility as a parent is to raise your kids and train them to be responsible. And so you've got to transition from, say, ages, I don't know, it'll be different for every family, but say 12 to 16, somewhere in there, you need to start transitioning and making sure that your child is capable of taking on this responsibility when they're somewhere between 18 and 24.
mhm.
All kids grow up at a different age in
Yeah,
different cultures. So, depending on when you're planning on cutting that string and letting them fly, they need to be able to self monitor. And so, you can't just restrict and control all of it and then one day let them go, they'll fail.
mhm,
So you
yeah,
need you need to pick a good 6 years of
yeah,
transition
very
where
true.
you're teaching, training, you're providing them with more responsibility with it as they're showing that they're capable of handling that responsibility. And then when they're showing they're not capable, you provide more restrictions on it.
True. So there's a very important point that you mentioned. You mentioned the point or the aspect of culture. Now, currently, you may find a child or a youth at whatsoever point in life might be having problems, and instead of them interacting with their parents or bringing the problem to the table to say, I'm having this challenge, I need you to help me, what they simply do is they always think of Google. They have to check the they have to check what's wrong with me or what's happening with me. Now, the problem is we are living in a global economy. The world is becoming smaller and smaller with the use of the internet. So, advice that a person from a different culture would give would be different with the other person from another culture. So, this brings about a barrier whereby the parents would be able to not understand why children are not doing something in a certain way that the parent wants them to do something. So now, my question here is that how do we manage to bridge the gap of children being able to see the difference of why when it is right to ask for advice online, or when it is right to communicate with the parents personally to say, I'm facing this. Should the issue of culture be first, then the issue of restriction second, or should first restriction come first, then you start instilling culture in children?
Well, I don't think you can prioritize one over the other. I mean, I think that they're both super important. And again, your job is going to be to manage all of this. And the connection and your relationship with your child is the key to maintaining communication all through the ages. So that's what my work is about. I'm teaching parents to
Mhm.
communicate better with their children, to set limits and boundaries and empower them so that they have a close connected relationship. When parents use very harsh punishment for discipline, it damages the relationship and the child does not feel safe to come to the parent. And so I'm teaching positive parenting to help parents do make sure that their kids are growing up responsible and respectful, but at the same time feeling loved and connected and safe. So that, yes, if you have an intact and good relationship with your child going into teenage years, they can and will be expected to come to you with problems. And
Mhm.
I think that that's a way that as parents we can say, no matter what, if you come to me, you're not in trouble. I'm here to support you and help you. And to really mean that, to
Mhm.
really mean that if your child comes to you, that you don't turn around and break your word and punish them. If they're going to come to you, you need to prove to them that you're not going to punish them. You're going to help them solve their problems and support them. And if you don't keep your word, they're not going to trust you and they will go to Google. They will go to their friends who may not be the best influence. And
Yeah.
that's, I mean, to me, that's the most important thing about my work is to help parents stay connected to their children above all. Because it's true that developmentally, when a child becomes a teenager, their peers become more important in their
Mm,
development. So
exactly.
understanding how to
Yeah.
navigate in others, and their parent can still be that authority figure at home that's a trusted source of information and support and help when they need it. And as parents, we can navigate that gap that seems so difficult, but it really isn't. It's okay to let our kids have, our teenagers have those relationships as important, but still maintain our influence with them.
Okay. So, with regards to the issue of parents learning not to punish the children, parents learning how to communicate with these children, like, what is your thought about the positive aspect or the positive approach? Because sometimes communication becomes really difficult between the parent and the child. So, how do you positively communicate to your child? How do you positively make sure that you are helping your child to grow up in the right positive direction?
Well, I mean, one of the ways is to just set an example for how you want them to be. So if you want them to problem solve and not to scream and yell and punch people, you have to parent that way. We're setting an example. So if I'm screaming and yelling and physically punishing my child, that's what they're going to learn to do. And so
Mhm.
that's how they're going to learn. Well, when I get big and strong enough, I'm going to solve my problems by hitting people. Like basically, that's what they're learning when we spank them. And so by taking that away, now as a
Mhm.
parent, I have to figure out, how am I going to guide my child's behavior? How am I
Mhm.
going to set limits on, for instance, we're talking about technology, while at the same time empowering them. And
Wow.
the research
Research
shows that
shows that
positive forms
positive
of
forms of
connection. I'm backfire. I'm
no,
repeating
no,
this.
no.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
okay, it's
it's
fine. Okay, yeah. The research shows that positive forms of discipline are much more effective in the long run than coercive forms of
huh?
discipline. So trying to figure out like how to motivate my child through love rather than fear. And again, I teach a whole 15-hour class, which I'm not going to teach here on this podcast, but how to do that. Like how can you motivate a child through love rather than fear? One thing is when you notice you're about to yell at them,
Mhm.
stop, take a deep breath, get down on your child's level and look at your child. In the moment where you want to strike them, get down and look in their little eyes and just ask yourself in your head, what's going on? Why is my child so discouraged right now that
mm,
they're not listening to me, or they're not doing what they're supposed to do, or they're being disrespectful? And love on your child, like physically touch, smile, look in their eyes and say, what's hurting you so much, honey?
mm,
You know, why you look really discouraged. What's going on? So instead of taking it personally like they're out to get us or they're going to ruin our life, to go, "Oh, my child's discouraged, my child's hurting. I need to help them figure out how to get this need met without destroying something or hurting somebody or whatever it might be that they're doing wrong."
wow. So, according to your explanation, would you agree to say if a child's upbringing is broken or wrong, it causes a chain and it grows up to developing the child even when they have their own family?
Well, yeah, I mean that's the problem here. It's like we parent the way we were parented. And
Mm,
so when we're exposed to a very harsh upbringing,
mm,
we say, when I'm a parent, I'll never do that. I'm never going to hurt my kids that way. And some people can achieve that to a certain extent. The
mm,
problem is when you get stressed, when you get tired, that's when you'll revert back to this instinctive behavior. And it's only instinctive because it's what you grew up with over and over and over again. And so that's why personal growth is so important for parents.
mm.
When you become a parent, one of your biggest jobs is going to be to heal all of those unhealed wounds that
Wow.
were that happened to you in childhood, because those are going to be the triggers. those
Mm,
those are the places where your children are going to do things maybe similar to when
same.
you were super
Yeah.
punished. It's going to push your button and you're going to overreact to your
Wow.
child in the present moment. And so those are the ways that as a parent we can dig deep and learn what hurt us and how it affected us, and then try to find and manage ways to do it different. And again, I provide tools for that in my classes of helping parents redo things so that
Mm,
they have a new way to parent rather than whatever they were brought up with.
awesome. So now you have talked about personal growth for the parents also. Now we have two situations here. We have the situation on the child side and the situation on the parent side. So usually parents want to work every day to simply provide the needs, necessary needs, provide for the home and pay bills and so on and so forth. So you find that the parents are so occupied most of the times. They come back home, they're exhausted, they're tired. So how do you merge parenthood into personal development? Because many parents would say, I don't have time to read a book. I don't have time maybe to attend classes, like maybe some of your classes. They'll be thinking, they'll be having all those procrastinations. How would you advise that someone or a parent out there who might be having this problem would be able to work around this?
Yeah. I mean, for me, you can't afford not to do this, because the destruction of your relationship with your child is lifelong. And if
Mm,
you just go through this unconsciously without ever looking at the deeper meaning of our relationship with our child, who they're becoming, who am I as a parent in my child's world? If you don't ever look at those deeper questions and heal any of the wounding and help your child grow and role model appropriate ways to be, you're missing the whole thing. I
mm,
mean, all that work isn't going to be worthwhile. And so you and then the amount of kids that will have super big problems that are going to demand your attention whether you can give it or not. It's like you can give it your attention before it gets that bad. You
mm,
can take a few minutes a day, go online, read some parenting blogs, do something. You don't have to take a whole class and invest a whole bunch of time and money. You can do small things. You can listen to this podcast, get a
yeah,
few tips, listen to others. I have a parenting pep talks podcast. It's 3 minutes a day. A parent can listen to that and
Mm,
get a little tip every day to start their day off with thinking about how can I be a better parent today, tips and tools, and do something. You can't afford not to. You can't.
mm,
You just if you do that, you're damaging all the opportunity that's here from having children and having this be a beautiful thing. I mean, our families, our kids our kids are our kids for a reason. They
mm-hmm.
came here to teach us something,
Exactly.
and they came here to learn from us as well. And the same thing for us. We're learning something from our children, and we have something to give our children. And we're not taking that to its ultimate if we don't really focus on it and give it the attention that it deserves.
So you mentioned the issue of you mentioned something to do with classes, right?
Mhm.
So I'm sure the classes you offer, are they supposed to be online or they're supposed to be in person?
Well, I've done this for 30 years. So originally they were all in person, and I did travel around the world. I taught in India and China and different places. And then about 15 years ago, I started teaching classes on the phone. So that way I was reaching parents from around the world, but not having to travel in a more a limited way, but a pretty good way. But then when the pandemic hit,
Mm,
everything changed. Now everything is online. So what I have now, I've taught my classes online, and I continue to teach for schools and other organizations that contract with me and hire me. But for just the individual parent listening from anywhere in the world, I have a self-directed class online. So you can go to positiveparenting.com and find my self-directed class, which
mhm.
is the videos and the audios from all the classes that I taught. So you can take it at your own pace and in your own time. And just what we're talking about, you're a busy parent. Can you give it 5 minutes a day? Can you give it 20 minutes a week? Whatever your situation is, you can figure out a way to do this. And by the end of a year, you could absorb an entire curriculum of a class that
Sure.
normally I would teach in person in, a month, and you take your own time at it and you just do it at your own pace.
So now I'm curious, like what really motivated you to be so engaged in this work? Because you have been doing this for quite some time. What really started the journey? Like what motivated you to start all this?
Well, that's a whole nother long story, but but basically I said I had gone through a very terrible divorce. I had 3 little kids. I was working for not enough money, and I said, "God, just give me work that I love, that makes a difference in the world, and
Wow.
that lets me be home after school for my children." And the parenting thing kind of fell in my lap. I mean, there's a longer story to that, but I won't go into it here right now. But that's how it started. And my vision was I just want to help children,
Mm,
especially abused children. And
mm,
abuse, I was saying abuse in kind of a light, like not a heavy way, but like to me, abuse is any time a children doesn't feel seen, heard, or understood, which is all of us.
I agree.
You
Mm,
know, and so I just want to help children, and I don't even work with children. I work with the parents, and the reason is that children are perfect. Children
mm,
are born perfect. There is nothing wrong with
mm,
children. The biggest way that I can help children is by helping their parents to be
wow.
able to see and hear and understand them and treat them better.
So, you having a very big audience of different parents from different backgrounds, how do you manage to connect? Because I'm sure sometimes there are issues of culture. For example, how the upbringing of a child in China might be different from the way the child is brought up, maybe in India, in the USA, or in Africa. So, how do you manage to? I'm sure there's something that you have found that's similar, no matter the culture, but I'm sure there are some key things that you have noted out, that you can point out to say, I think, despite the culture, but I think these number of things are similar according to your experience in the past years.
Yeah, and I think that's children are the common factor. I mean, kids are kids everywhere. They're gonna, they're gonna test the limits if they're allowed to. And I think listening to the way you were phrasing that question, I realize I've taught mostly like what we would call Western in a Western world. So in China, I taught Western parents. I was teaching at a learning center. I wasn't teaching Chinese parents. I haven't gone to cultures that are autocratic. completely authoritarian, because this is a democratic parenting style. This
Mhm.
is it doesn't work. When I was in India, they wanted me there teaching positive discipline and positive parenting,
Mhm.
and the culture in general was very autocratic from the
Oh.
history, and so there was a conflict there. The teachers wanted it in the classroom, they wanted absolute obedience to
Mhm.
authority, but we want our kids to be creative, and I was like, well, you can't exactly have both of those.
No, 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 no.
So, so I had a little bit of trouble teaching there. I mean, and I navigate that as it occurs to me. I started early on when I first started teaching. I was in Southern California, and so I had a lot of Hispanic parents. So I learned about the cultural differences. One
Mhm.
cultural difference was that mothers never took care of themselves. I mean, in general, mothers don't take very good care of themselves, but the
Okay.
Hispanic parents especially took care of the kids and the husbands and family and everybody before themselves. And I teach a lot of self care. And so not
Mm.
only was that a transition for them, but they were thrilled to
Oh.
allow it to be okay for them to take care of themselves. Um, and the Indian culture was, to me, it was so funny because I teach a lot about handling feelings, and
Mm.
and Indians just have this stoic, like, I can't read those parents. Feel like they don't wear their feelings on their face the way I do, right? And so it's like, oh, how do I teach about handling? And they loved it. It was, it was super fun because it's eye opening. It's looking at a new way, and I think that's the important thing for parents is look at a different way. You might not agree with everything that I teach, but it's going to give you something to think about. It's
Ag
going to give you something to contrast and
Mhm.
compare, and you'll come up with what
Different.
is right for you for your children.
Mm. I think that's the biggest mistakes I've observed also with many parents. Many parents don't really want to look at how other people are doing it or learn from other people because they have this thought of how they want their children to be brought up. And like you have put it, if a parent comes from a background where they were not brought up perfectly or rightfully in a very good direction, it continues like that. And to them, that will be what will look right. So I think it's a big problem. I totally agree with you. And I've seen many parents refusing to look at how other people are doing it and just like I think this is the right thing. And it's difficult to convince such kind of people. I'm anxious and curious to know how you manage to convince these people or to say, no, actually, this is what is supposed to be done. How do you do that?
Yeah, it's with love. And so I cannot help people that don't want to be helped. And this is another trend that I've seen over time. When I first started teaching here in the US, there
Mm-hmm.
was a huge stigma. If you said parenting class, it meant in people's minds that somebody abused their kid and that they have to take a parenting class because they've done something wrong. And it's not that way. Parenting classes are educational just like everything else. We take Lamaze classes, we take the birthing classes, we take classes how to how to sew, how to do I mean, there we have classes for everything. It's educational. That's all parenting is. It doesn't mean you're a bad parent. It's just looking at a bigger viewpoint of what this is about, what kids are learning and what's possible for us. And
Mm,
so that to me is part of it. And over time, I saw that that stigma came off.
mm,
Like, the stigma that was on when I first started teaching in the mid-90s is not like that now. Now, in many places, it's actually popular to take parenting classes, and there's parenting experts everywhere, and, it's a big deal. And that is what I feel brings along the parents that you're referring to, those parents that would never come and seek my services out, and often those are the parents that need it most. They're just not going to pay me to get help from me. But if I teach the parents that are willing, and I'll take a school system, for example. When a school brings me in, say
mhm,
once like in the fall and the spring to teach a workshop, only the parents the principal's biggest complaint is we know the parents that'll come. It's the parents that show up for PTA. It's those quote good parents. Those are the ones that are going to come. We can't get the ones who need it to come. But what I found and what they found is if they have me every, fall, spring, those other ones will come because it'll be accepted. The parents will talk about it like, oh, this was so cool and I got so much help. And, I did this with my kids, and the word will get out that it's not a big condemning thing. It's actually the appropriate thing to do as a parent is to show up for these things and learn how to work with our kids better. And so that's what brings them along. The it's not trying to change any individual. It's
Mm.
taking the ones that are willing,
Wow.
and those are the ones that'll spread the word. And if I see a parent, quote, abusing a child, like I've been in a mall before and with my mom, and some parent will be screaming at their kid or having something, and my mom will elbow me and go give her your card. And I'm like, Mom, that person does not need my business card right now. That person needs love, you know? And if I approach it all, it's going to be with, can I help you? Can I hold your baby for you? Do you need me to push this? Can I pick up that? It looks like you've had a rough day. Do you need a hug? I mean, I'm gonna not offer teaching. I'm
Mm.
gonna offer actual something that will actually help that mom and relieve her burden in the moment because that's what's causing her to lose her mind.
Wow. It's so inspiring to hear you talk about this point because I'm impressed by the way you have put out the aspect or the component of compassion and love. Because I totally agree with you. You can't help someone who doesn't need or see the want to be helped. I think
No.
that's really true. And this is the problem I think that many teachers out there are doing. They are trying to help people that are not willing to be helped, and it creates a bridge or a gap between understanding or change and just living in the same way that you have been brought up. So how can people be able to like attend some of your classes? For example, if I'm in another country, how might I have the opportunity to just be able to interact with you? Or maybe you have master classes where people can directly interact with you, or are they just supposed to have the podcasts that you have set for them on your site, or how do you manage to do that?
Yeah, at any level that they're capable. And I know a lot of places in the world, internet access is difficult, and so it depends on your what you're capable of receiving computer wise on your end.
Mhm.
Yes, access to the podcast. If you can do that, that's the simplest and no cost way to interact is to listen to the podcast. Um, Getting the classes online, if you have a computer where you're able to download things or where you're able to watch a video in line or whatever, those that kind of access, you can take the class, which costs money. It's not much money, but it costs money.
Mm.
um, I do master classes. I was doing them once a month, but I have a couple months off because I have a lot of contracts I'm teaching right now. So January is the next one. It's a power struggle. It's $10. So you can attend that on Zoom. That's with me personally. You're
Yeah.
in the Zoom with me. I don't do the like speaker view. Everybody's in here with me. I've got somebody who chats and makes sure everybody's taken care of. If they have questions, they can ask. I bring people on. We do exercises. We break out groups. So it's a very personal way to interact with me, and that's on my website as well. And I do personal coaching, so we can do one-on-one coaching as well, which is more pricey, obviously. But if
Hmm.
if a parent wants to do that, I can do that also.
Okay. So then, do you have any? Because I remember you mentioned something like autocratic kind of parenting. So do you have any restriction to say? I think I prefer working with these kinds of parents with this kind of cultural background, or you are willing to. It's an open platform where anybody who wants can be able to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anybody who wants to, and they're not going to seek me out if they want to continue to be autocratic. They're going to seek me out because they want something different. I have plenty of Muslim parents, right? There's a very restrictive ideology there of control, but plenty of those parents see that I want to raise my kids differently with the love and the connection that you and I are talking about. So it's not even about religious or race or anything like that. I get persons of every this being communicating with our children is not religious, it's not ethnic, it's just communicating with our children. So I'm able to bridge most of the cultural or race divides with what I'm doing. It's loving our children, and that's we all do that. We all want that. And there's no difference between us. And and that's what makes my what I love about my work. It's like who are I was doing something exercise a couple of weeks ago, and it's like, who is my my world, and my world is anybody who has a parent.
Mm. Wow.
So nobody's excluded from my realm.
Because everybody has a parent.
Right? I mean, at first I was thinking it was anybody who was a parent, but it's like, no, I help people. And in fact, my partner that I work with that helps me teach the classes, she's not a parent, but
Mm,
she's so good at nurturing the parents and helping them learn. And I'm like, she would be excluded if I said I was just helping parents.
mm.
So I had to reframe it. It's like, no, anybody who has a parent,
Right.
you can be in my club.
That's really, really inspiring. I'm so inspired by your work, your story, and the way you just have been articulating things. Your concept of understanding all this is really amazing because I've really come to realize to say the biggest problem is not even actually the children, but the biggest problem, according to our conversation, is that the parents themselves have a bigger role to play. If a parent focuses on personal development, it will spread to the children. If a parent does not focus on personal development, the children will also not focus on personal development. I don't know if I'm wrong, but that's how I've understood it.
No, I think that's exactly right on. And yeah, I mean, it's like it's bad marketing to say to parents you need to change yourself. So that's, that doesn't really that doesn't go over well. It's more helpful to say, "Hey, make your kid be better, like shape
Be-
your kid up." And then they come, and I'll tell you, the first week of class, we do the class. They all come back the second week and they're like, "Oh, this isn't about my kids. This is about me changing me." And it's like, "Yep." And I can't tell people that. They have to learn it on their own, and they learn it through the exercises that I do in the class, where we
mm,
look at things from the child's perspective, and that's when they figure it out.
Wow. So now, just to reach our conclusion, like, what are some of the main last points that you'd like to give out to parents or to other people that there are some people that are not yet ready for parenthood but are trying to transition into parenthood, who want to have a family. What are some of the ways that you'd like to give out or to talk about or share with these people?
Just to realize how important this is. Like
Mm,
this is the to me this was the most epic work I did in my life was raising my children and doing the best that I could at it. So to really take it it's only a small portion of your life, a third to a quarter of your life is your parenting time,
mm,
and to really make it worthwhile to see how important it is, like raising these little humans into being productive supportive humans in this world is
mm,
so important now.
mm,
We've managed to put out a whole lot of not good people, right? Let's change that.
mm,
Let's raise kids with more love and support so that they can grow up and be decent humans to each other and not be hurting each other and killing each other all over the place.
oh,
I think we have a role to play in that as parents.
very true. So, would you like to just one more time just share with us like the website,
Mhm.
uh, the courses, how someone might be able to access your course, and how someone might also be able to reach you? Because I'm sure people would want to reach you and be able to ask or consult further. Because I'm sure I would spend the whole day discussing this, and you might have a lot of questions. Because I'm still having a lot of questions in my head, but I'm trying to lessen the question. So how would people be able to reach you?
Yes. So my website is positiveparenting.com. And
Mhm,
on there, you'll find the link to my podcast. You'll find the link to a blog that you could read articles about different aspects of parenting. You'll find the link to my self directed online course. And you'll find the link to the Zoom masterclass that I
mm,
do. And so all of that you can find on the website. I'm also on Instagram at Positive Parenting Debbie. You
mm,
can visit me there. And I'm most likely to respond to you there because I'm trying to build my Instagram up. It's not that big. And
mm.
so if you write to me there or comment there, I'll actually respond to you more likely than email
Yeah.
because I want to build up my little traffic there. I do have a Facebook page as well that's Ask Deb Now. It's on Facebook, and that's probably all that parents need to know. The website really has everything that you need.
Okay. I'm very, very happy that you are available to have this conversation. I'm so inspired, and I assure you a lot of people are going to be changed and transformed by this. And I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to probably another discussion in the near future where we can talk about much interesting and much bigger topics.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been wonderful.
Thank you so much as well, Debbie. Thank you.